Welcome everybody, and thank you for your interest in this session on the Master of Teaching degree. I'm the head of school, and I'm very proud to work at this university because it's a very prestigious university, and I want to tell you a little bit about that in a moment. So I'm a teacher. I've been in schools teaching. I've taught every grade from reception, so 5-year-olds, right up through secondary schools and into tertiary. So I sort of call that birth to death, and I've taught everything in between. And it's a fantastic profession. I love the interactions I have with students and with other teachers. And I hope you enjoyed tonight's webinar and look forward to your questions at the end. Okay, just waiting for this next slide to come through.
Technical difficulties, there we go.
There we go, there's always technical difficulties. And what a good teacher does is just keep going on and copes with them. So why would you consider studying teaching at the University of Adelaide? Well, we are one of the universities in what we call the group of 8 universities in Australia, and that means that we are in the top 8 universities across Australia. Now, those universities have a lot of similar characteristics, and one of them is that they're research intensive. And I think that's really important because the research that our staff do informs our teaching in the classroom, and that makes it a really current and realistic experience for you because you get to know that you're getting current practice, current research, and that therefore it's a really good education for you. We're also ranked in the top 1% of universities in the world. We were established in 1874, so we are the 3rd oldest university across Australia, the oldest in South Australia. And that's actually a really good thing because our foundations are built on excellence in our research and in our teaching, and that's something we really pride ourselves on. Our university is also dedicated to teaching our students well, but not just at the undergraduate level, also at the postgraduate level, because we're committed to informing the educated leaders for tomorrow. And I think that's a really important thing in teaching because the world is ever changing, as you know, and the teachers in classrooms today, like Jamie, are probably teaching students for jobs that they don't know even exist yet. So if you're thinking, 50 years ahead, it's really difficult to think what jobs might be around and what might I be able to do. But we know that there will always be a job for a teacher. And I think that focus on a changing career and doing different things every day and keeping technological up to date is really important. So that's some of the things we do at the University of Adelaide. We also have over 100 Rhodes Scholars, including Australia's first Indigenous winner and 5 Nobel laureates in our alumni community. So in the School of Education, where I work, we have a very strong and prestigious group of alumni who are often leaders not only in schools in South Australia, but also in Australia and beyond, because graduates from our programs are eligible to get work anywhere in the world. So why would you choose the School of Education at the University of Adelaide? Well, we're situated in a faculty of arts, and that's actually a good thing because there are other schools in that faculty and you get to mix with other students across different disciplines. So regardless of the subject that you have a passion about that you want to come in and teach, you'll get to meet with students with other interests or similar interests. And I think that's a really good thing as you become a teacher in a school, because in faculties and schools you get to mix with lots of different people as well. And it also feeds into the good research and teaching that we can do together. So the School of Education is also has a strong history of over 120 years of existence in South Australia. So we are the oldest School of Education. We were the first to introduce teacher education into South Australia, and we have a very long-standing tradition in preparing excellent teachers for the workforce. Our vision in the school is to prepare graduates for scholarly teaching and to lead learning across local, national and global contexts. So that's giving you that global view. We also give you opportunities to pursue your postgraduate studies. So coming into this particular degree, which I'll talk about in a moment, it's a postgraduate degree. And so at the University of Adelaide, you have the opportunity not only to do undergraduate offerings, but postgraduate, and even post this Master of Teaching degree, you can go on and do further study, which I'm hoping Jamie will do too, things like a Master of Education or a PhD even. So it's a lifelong commitment. In some of the courses that we have in this degree, we actually employ practicing teachers to come in and teach the classes. And I think that's important. They come into classes which we call curriculum and pedagogy. So they're classes about the particular subjects that you will teach, and they have current practice. So they're really in tune with what's happening in schools and how to deal with children and young people. And they actually bring that into the degree where we're preparing you for the workforce. And I think that's a real positive. The other important thing about this teaching degree is that obviously you will do placements in schools, and I'll talk about that in a minute a bit more, but we have very positive relationships with a lot of schools across South Australia, in the country, in the city, in the south, the north, the east, the west, all across the state. And that ensures that you will get a quality placement when you go out there for schools, for your school placement. So I've just included some slides, and if we were in a classroom and we could be interactive, I was thinking of asking you, well, what do these pictures tell you about wanting to be a teacher, and why would you choose teaching as a career? I think you can tell from the photographs there that we have really engaging people working with the children in the classroom and the young people in the classroom. They're keen, they're interested in what students are doing and learning. And I think you can see warmth in those photos, which I think is a really good trait for a teacher, to have that care factor when you're working with students. Teachers, in addition to having those sorts of qualities, are also what we call agents of transformation or agents of change. And that's because you can directly influence the community that you work in. A school is a very community-based place, and you get to be a part of that community when you're either on your practicum, on your placement, or when you are a graduate working in a school. And I think that's really exciting, to be part of a community where you can engage not only with the children and the young people in your class, but also the parents, the people that work in the community, and you can help promote good things about the community and influence community development and things that are going on there. You also can focus on change in society, because we're forever changing. Technology and other things mean that things happen all the time. And one of the things I really enjoyed about a teacher was that no day was ever the same in the classroom. Every day was different. And I found that a very exciting profession when I was in a school, to just get up every day, go to school, and you never quite knew what might happen that day, but you always left feeling good that you'd achieved something. Teachers also see their work as a real moral responsibility, because that's what we call part of being in a people profession. You get to work with children in classrooms, and you're not only teaching them content, the content that you're passionate about, but you're also teaching them things like values and attitudes and morals, and helping particularly adolescents grow and develop, because the program we offer here is just for secondary education. So you're working with an age group that you can really influence and help and support. And the last part about transformation is around curriculum, and curriculum's a word that really describes the content, the subjects that you teach. And you can help plan that with children and work with the children in the classroom on that. And you can do that in a way that's quite topical and current. For example, if you're a history teacher, there's always things happening that are going on in the world, and you can bring that into the classroom. and help the children make sense of those things that are happening around the world. Teachers can also make a difference, and they do, because they want to make a difference. They want to make things better or different all the time. And some of the things on this slide talk about helping kids to be thinkers, to be successful and achieve, helping young people, as I said, straddle and navigate their life as they grow up into young adults, work with new ideas and change, influence a better society. Curriculum I talked about. Social justice is about helping those kids that probably are less fortunate than yourself, helping them adjust to school and learn to be successful and confident, and also teaching kids about leadership, because that's a good quality to have as a child going through the secondary school. So this is a bit about the Master of Teaching. It's a graduate program. It is a 2-year degree, but we teach it over 18 months, which means it is a bit more intensive than perhaps your undergraduate degree. But we do that because most students that come into this degree are extremely motivated and high achievers, and they really want to learn the skills of being a teacher and get out there in the workforce as quickly as possible. So we find that this structure works really well for most people. Of course, if it doesn't work for you, you can do it part-time. There's no issue with that. So we run it over 18 months. The first year is focused mainly on the skills of learning to be a teacher. So this slide tells you about some of the courses you do, like student-teacher interaction, and there you get to learn about, student behaviour and their development and their adolescent issues and all of that sort of stuff. That's really important as a teacher, to understand how kids grow and think. The curriculum methodology units are around the subject and how to teach them, how to be a good teacher. There's professional experience placements there. I'll talk more about that in a minute. And you also get to choose some electives, which are also listed on this slide. And there's choice there. So that's the first year. It's pretty full. You can see from the slides that it's structured over 4 terms. So we've structured it so that it aligns with the 4 terms in a school. So from the very beginning, you actually get to experience what it feels like to be a teacher working in the school calendar year, rather than being a uni student and working in semesters. So it's a really realistic experience for you. In the second year, you do a 6-month intensive program on research. And we call this the Researcher in Residence program. So over the summer, you do a core course called Research Design, and that helps you to design research, to think about methodologies in research, how to do research, how to collect data, and how to reflect on that and write that up. And what we do is put you with groups of other students and base you in a school for a 6 months experience, where you actually do your research in collaboration with the school on topics that they and you are interested in. And you write a dissertation, just a mini dissertation, as a part of that. Now, this is a really significant feature of our Master of Teaching degree here at the University of Adelaide. And you won't find this structure in other Master of Teaching degrees. From this experience, you will learn research skills if you want to do any work as a researcher in an education field. You will also be able to apply for jobs in schools. And I saw one advertised the other day where they wanted a SACE research coordinator. SACE is the South Australian Certificate of Education. And they were looking for someone with research skills. So if you've been in a secondary school lately, you might find that not many teachers out there have research skills. So this is actually a really good feature for your employability. And the other thing that's really good about this component is that it meets a certain level, we call it the AQF level, that's equivalent to a master's degree, and you will be able to go on and do a PhD. You'll be eligible to apply for a PhD. So if you see yourself wanting to do research in education, this is a good degree to enable you to get the teaching experience and qualification, but also the research component as well. So just on professional experience, you do 65 days in the first year. We do them in 2 placement blocks in 2 different schools. The first block is 20 days, and that's in school term 2. The second block is 45 days, and that's happening right now in school term 3. We place you in a quality school that we work with, and we find the placement for you. You don't have to go off and find it yourself. We make sure we get a good place for you. And we also have staff from the school come out to visit you while you're in your school doing your placement to help and guide you. And I'm out in schools at the moment supporting some of the students as well. So what do you need to get into the program? Well, you need a bachelor's degree or the equivalent from an Australian university or another higher degree institution. So that's a 3-year degree. What's important in that degree is that you've done 2 majors in 2 teaching areas. So if you think about the school curriculum, you have things like English, history, business studies, mathematics, science, languages, teaching English to students of a second language, the arts, English, did I say? Whole variety of them. If you've got 2 majors in 2 of those areas, and they're all on our website, so you can check them afterwards, then you can come into this program. So we suggest 2 majors because that makes you more employable than having a major and a minor. But if there is room in the quota for you to get in, you can sometimes get in with a major and a minor. From next year, the middle of next year, so that might be after you apply, if you're thinking of coming in next year, you will need to pass what we are calling non-academic entry requirements. And this is for every university in Australia. It's a new requirement that's brought in, and there will be an assessment around things like your interpersonal skills, your motivation to teach, like why do you want to be a teacher? What sort of organised or planned person are you? What sort of evidence have you got for things like that? Your self-efficacy associated with wanting to be a teacher. So those things won't apply for entry beginning of 2018, but they will after that. Just a couple of compulsory things you need to think about. Before you go into schools, every student has to have a cleared department check, and this is sometimes referred to as a police check or a criminal check. And as you would predict, all teachers need to be safe people, and this check just makes sure we screen the right people for the profession. You also need to do a 1-day mandatory course in reporting child abuse and neglect. And you do that before we put you into schools. But then at the end of your program, before you graduate, you also need to do, you might have heard of this, the Untitled test. It's the literacy and numeracy test, which every teacher graduate has to do across Australia. Everybody has to do that before they graduate. You also do a program called the Keeping Safe Child Protection Curriculum, but we help you do those things and give you more information later. So these are some of the things teachers need to have. So if you, and I'm not going to go through them all because we're running a little bit short of time and I want Jamie to have a chat with you, but these are some of the things good teachers have. So if you think you have some of these qualities, then I think you're really well suited to come and do teaching at the University of Adelaide with us. So I'd like to introduce Jamie now, who's one of our graduates. Welcome, Jamie.
Now, just before Jamie gets started, I will jump in for a sec. Just a couple of bits of information. So if you are a domestic student, so that's an Australian citizen or permanent resident, or a citizen of New Zealand, you can apply for admission for this degree through the South Australian Tertiary Admissions Centre, otherwise known as SATAC. They have a separate portal for postgraduate qualifications. If you're an international student, your application's actually made direct to the university, so you can go to our international student page and view it there. Now, just as a reminder, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A section. After Jamie's had her piece, we will then go through and address all the questions in order. Now that I've suitably embarrassed her, I'll let Jamie take over.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Faye and the university for having me here to talk about the degree. It's a real privilege to talk about my experience. I really valued my education when I was at Adelaide University, so it's great to be back. And I actually have a degree from an undergraduate degree from Adelaide. I have a Bachelor of Commerce. So in my previous life, I was not a teacher. I worked in business field, working with market research. I also worked for a business doing sales management. So it was a huge leap to go back to uni and to do the postgraduate study, to change career completely and to become a teacher. So I just wanted to share some of my experience about taking that leap, going back as a mature age student. So I was really lucky that I have lots of support from my family. My husband, when I said, I'm thinking about being a teacher, he went, do it. And it really was important to me to have that support and that help. I know that some people have concerns going back to study in terms of how am I going to fit this in with my job. So I was able to work part-time for some of my degree. And then when I was on placement and after I had to quit my job, it was really good to have his support there. So I know that is a concern going back to study. I think that the new format of having the 4 weeks for the first place means that it is easier to keep your job longer part-time while you are studying the undergraduate degree, and then doing that bigger placement towards the end when you're ready to actually change degrees is a really good format change. So as a mature age student, I sometimes flew under the radar, which was nice. Tried not to ask too many questions and to be too obvious as that mature age person in class. In fact, when some of my fellow students found out that I was a mature age student, I got a few, we won't tell anyone. So I do know the concern of being that older student in class, but I actually think it's a real asset, especially if you're looking at becoming a teacher. Having that real world experience, having a bit more maturity about what you've been through in life really helps you focus when you go and do any kind of postgraduate study. So my first degree, I did it straight out of school, thought, well, I should go to uni, and did a whole degree probably just because I thought I should. Whereas when you go back and you do postgraduate study, I think it's something that you choose to do. It's something that sometimes you have to sacrifice for. It's something that you're really focused on. So I actually found, even though it was a more intensive course, I found that I was more focused, that I actually found it easier the second time around studying. So for people that are concerned about going back to uni or going back to uni after a long time about being away from uni, hopefully that encourages you. I was also concerned about whether I would like it. It was a big jump. So having that placement first up means that you do have an opportunity to get into a school to see whether you do actually want to be a teacher. I knew that I liked kids. I liked the idea of teaching, but it wasn't until I was on my first placement. I was lucky enough to go to Kais, which is on Kangaroo Island. I had a few days to get settled, and then I got in front of my first ever class, and the first few seconds I was really nervous and my voice got really wobbly and I was really worried, and then it was only 1 minute and I just calmed down and I really enjoyed it. I had so much fun on my placement. I learned so much. So that was my biggest concern, public speaking. So I was really worried about, was teaching like public speaking? Was I going to be really nervous? And actually it's not the same thing. I never get nervous being in front of my class, whereas if I have to speak in public, if someone gave me a microphone and a whole bunch of people that had to listen to me, I'd get very nervous. So if you're worried about public speaking, that's also something that I think teaching is not public speaking. I also found that being a mature age student meant that I brought different experiences into my placements, into my teaching, into my degree. I think that for me, having a business background was a real asset, but just having life experience also gives you more maturity. So in that way, being a mature age student, I think, is a good thing. So if you have already done a degree and there's some time between you picking up going back to postgraduate study, it is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. If you're just thinking about, I finished a degree, I'm not sure if I really want to go into this field and I'd like to teach, or I'd like to add to my degree, I also think it's really beneficial. The postgraduate study for education allows you to build on what you already know and make it practical in a senior classroom. And I really like that about the degree, that it has that senior focus, that you can bring all the past experiences that you have into your classroom in a meaningful way. So what do you have to offer when you have your past experiences? Don't feel that you can't be a teacher or that you can't bring those things into it. I think that having real life experience makes classroom curriculum feel real. If you can bring in that kind of relatability, students really appreciate that. One of my other concerns going back to teaching was the use of technology. So while I am younger, I have grown up with some technology. I haven't grown up with all of it. So going back to uni and having to pick up a lot of new devices, new technology, and the range that's available for the classroom is just amazing. I've really felt that the Adelaide Uni course really prepared me for that. We learnt lots of ICTs, and it was a real benefit going on placement and being able to put into practice things that I'd learned at uni on how to use ICTs in the classroom, when quite often an older workforce that hasn't had that opportunity don't know how to use all the tools and devices and different things that you may learn to use here. So that was another benefit from the degree. And for someone who felt very ICT literate at the start, I definitely think that I'm a pioneer now at work. So I tend to teach a lot of people how to use things, so that's a real benefit. It's also probably my biggest tip to you, treat your placement as a job interview. So they will tell you that over and over and over again, but it is so true. So take your placement as an opportunity to show off the skills or what you have to offer that school. So because you're at university, you're learning the current research, as Faye mentioned. You may be ahead of some of the people who have done teaching degrees possibly decades before. They may not be as up to date with some of that research. So you're also there to have a mutual learning experience. And that's something that teaching always is. It's a profession where you're always learning. If you come into this degree thinking that you already know everything about your topic, that's a good confidence to have, but you have to have that attitude of I'm here to learn, I'm here to learn more. So while some people have quite high qualifications in the area, you have to have that attitude of what am I here to learn today, or what can I apply. Sometimes on your placement you may meet teachers that you learn what not to do in the classroom, and that's a learning experience too. So most teachers you'll find are really high quality, and they have lots of expertise they'll share with you, and then sometimes you learn not what to do, which is also beneficial. And I actually used my placement reports as a way to get a job. When I went into my job interview, I brought my prac reports. I left a copy with them. I said, please read over, see how I went on placement. So that's my tip for you. Another tip, make sure that you keep in contact with your classmates. They're great resources. You never know what you're going to be teaching, and the people that you meet when you go to study and who are with you will be really great resources. And my last tip before we look at some of your questions, which will be really good, I have to find my last tip. Make sure that you keep in touch with staff. So the staff at the university were really helpful when I was here. I still keep in contact with some of the staff, Kate, who emailed me about this. So they're really helpful while you're here. They're always here to help. And then when you're at school, the staff are there to help too. So whether you're on placement or whether you get a job, people who work not necessarily as teachers but as staff are always there to help. So admin staff, library staff, that community that Faye was talking about, they're a real resource when you're on placement. And if you have that learning attitude, you'll do really well.
Thanks, Jamie.
Brilliant. Well, it's time for your questions. So I can see here that we've got a few questions already. Now, if you did have any questions for either of our presenters, please feel free to chuck them in the question section at the start. So in terms of what we have up there, let's start with the question, which will be directed at Faye. In terms of placements, is it compulsory to complete a rural placement?
No, you don't have to do a rural placement. We encourage students to do a rural placement because there are teacher shortages in the country. And so it's a good place to start your career if you want work. But no, you don't have to go to the country.
Beautiful. Okay, now we've got a couple more questions. So we've got someone here who is qualified overseas in a Bachelor of Business Economics, and they're wondering if they can do a graduate diploma to become a teacher or if they'll need to do the Masters of Teaching.
Right. We don't offer a graduate diploma in education anymore, and neither does any university across Australia. That's because it was a one-year qualification, and there have been changes in accreditation recently to say that all universities must offer a 2-year qualification as a minimum as a postgraduate. But now we cleverly do that over 18 months because we realise that 2 years are a long time to take out of your life when you've already done a degree, but you cannot do a graduate diploma. You will have to do a Master of Teaching.
And as a follow-on from that same question, would having a background in economics and business qualify someone to teach maths in schools?
Yes, it would actually. One of the students I'm supervising in a school at the moment has economics and business, and she's teaching mathematics to years 9, 10, 11 and 12.
Fantastic.
And if I can follow on from that one, to get into the degree, you do need to have 2 teaching areas where you have qualification, but schools don't have the same criteria. So either applying for a job or once you're in a school, you don't necessarily have to have the experience in that teaching area to teach it. And I'm an example of that. I'm a legal studies teacher at Woodcroft College, and that wasn't one of my initial teaching areas. So I had a lot of fun learning a lot of curriculum to teach it, but it's actually one of my favourites now. So you don't have to have that qualification, a unit qualification, once you're at a school.
Beautiful. Okay, so next up we have someone who is a double major in sociology and psychology, and they're wondering if they can teach both of those subjects, or do they need to do something outside of those areas?
No, those 2 areas would make you eligible to teach. You don't need to pick up extra content area.
Beautiful. Okay. The questions are flying out. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So another Faye question. How many days a week would you expect for contact hours outside of placements?
Yeah, so as I said, it's a fairly intensive program because it's taught over 18 months. So if you're doing it full time, you can expect to be at uni nearly every day.
Excellent. And then, of course, you do have those intensive periods for your placements, so you'll be available for those.
So during placement, it is a full-time commitment in a school. So for the 20 days, which is the first placement, you're there Monday to Friday for 4 weeks from 8:15 to 4 o'clock, something like that, 8:30 to 4 o'clock every day for those 4 weeks. And then for the 45 days, the same. It's a continuous placement. So the placements can't be done part-time, but the coursework can be done part-time if you're finding that you need to work at the same time.
Excellent. Okay, so we have someone else with a question wanting to know if they've done subjects that aren't directly translating into high school subjects. So, for example, gender studies or anthropology. Is there a way to then gain a pathway into the Masters of Teaching?
Yeah, I think the Future Students team could help here.
Yes.
Because if you're not eligible in the 2 areas, they can advise you on what to do to get eligible in those 2 areas. So it might mean that you have to pick up a couple of extra subjects in an area to actually build up to that major. And so if you think you haven't got them now ready for next year entry, now would be a good time to start looking at that so you can study them over the summer. do a summer course or something like that, or even do it through Universities Australia or something like that, so you can get your extra courses up to meet those 2 majors or the major minor, but we prefer 2 majors.
Absolutely, and the Future Students team at the university is happy for you to call up or come in and make an appointment with us. You'll find the university's phone number on just about every page, and you can come in and organise that, and then we can work with the Faculty of Arts to make sure that you get all of the information that you need for that one. Okay, next up, we've got someone who's working full-time as an engineer, and they're wondering if they're able to sort of balance out between about 3 days of work a week and part-time study.
I think that might be a little bit hard to maintain 3 days a week. You might need to talk to your employer about maybe 2 days a week, but you would need to look at the timetable to see how you would work around that. But I think it would be a bit hard. But we do have engineers in the program, and what a lot of them do is sort of save up their holidays and leave so they can take time off work to study the program.
Excellent. So we've got a couple of different application related questions. So Faye, when would the next intake for the degree be? Is it the start of 2018? This
Yes.
is the structure?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so because it's got an accelerated structure, it means that we can't admit students partway through the year. As a result of that, you'd be starting basically on your placements for term 3 before you've had any of the background knowledge
Correct.
that you need to be successful.
Yeah, you can't come in mid-year.
Yeah, so that means that the next intake will be for January 2018.
Correct.
And so applications for that will be going live very, very soon. And from the time of recording, it's typically around the sort of August-September period. So keep an eye out for those. As I said, for domestic students, that is through SATAC, and for international students, that's direct to the university. So that will get those questions there. Next up, we've got another person who's got an engineering degree, and they're wondering if they will be able to teach, which sort of STEM subjects they'd be able to teach. Would that be based on the particular engineering style?
Engineering students usually do mathematics and some science, I would imagine. What do you think?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely probably be able to pick up science, but whether they have
Yeah.
that as a teaching area initially.
Yeah, it depends what sort of engineering you've specialised in. For example, if it's chemical engineering, well, I would anticipate you could do some chemistry, for example. But definitely mathematics. There's also a curriculum area called technology. You might be able to pick up some of that maybe.
Brilliant. Now, there's one question that I can answer. So in terms of deferring offers for study, unfortunately, it's not actually possible with postgraduate degrees. So you apply, and if you're made an offer into the degree, you do need to commence at that period that you're offered. So if you're not sure if you're ready to start straight away, you can always apply. If you made an offer, you can choose to decline the offer to give yourself a bit more time, and that way we can reallocate that place to someone else. Or you just wait and reapply for the following year when you feel more comfortable to start the degree. Now, we've got quite a few more questions here. So one thing I do want to just ask, because I feel that poor Jamie's been sitting here without much to do. Jamie, one of the concepts that came up quite frequently throughout the talk was the idea of community. Would you say that it was a bit of, was it a pretty smooth transition for you to be welcomed into the school communities on your placement and in your job?
Yeah, I think because when you're on placement, you usually have a supervising teacher. They help on placement to integrate you into that community. For my first placement, I went to Kangaroo Island, and I actually really recommend the country placement because it is a different experience, and you do learn a lot from the different difficulties or different things that students have in rural schools. But I just went with that learning attitude, and I went to everything. So I found myself watching a lot of netball and some football because that's what the kids were into. And then, you know, the next week they'd come up to you and say, I saw you at my game. So just integrating yourself into the community is important. On my second placement, it's actually where I'm teaching now, Woodcroft College. I actually had 3 different teachers. So I had a lot of different integration into the college. So that was really good too.
Fantastic. It's really, I think the thing that's sort of coming out today is that you do really need to be proactive when you are out on those placements. As Jamie said, it is essentially a job interview, so you really want to make sure that you're trying everything, you're being involved, you're being very approachable, and just really putting yourself out there, because can clearly work out for you. So I have another question here about doing online studies. Now, unfortunately, our Masters of Teaching degrees are on campus only. Just because of the intensive structure, it's not really conducive to online learning, and as well, teaching is a very social profession. So we do want to make sure that our students are getting that engagement. That question also had a bit of information about teaching English as a second language. So that is available, but not through the Masters of Teaching. It's actually through our Masters of Education qualification instead. Again, that is an on-campus only degree though. Now, we have another question here about scholarships. So there are scholarships available for most University of Adelaide degrees, and you can actually have a look at those on our scholarships website. The website has a search function where you can filter it based on what you are doing and what you're planning on doing. So you can go through and say, okay, I'm a commencing student in a master's degree within the Faculty of Arts, and it will list all of the relevant scholarships that are available to you.